The city smelled of rot and smoke. Evelyn Carter clutched her pistol, her fingers trembling from exhaustion rather than fear. She had spent weeks searching for her son, Noah, scouring the ruins of what was once Seattle, but every lead had turned to dust. Until today. The static-filled radio message had been brief, almost unintelligible, but she had heard the name, Noah. A location followed. Pier 14, still alive. The words hit her like a jolt of electricity. Hope. She moved swiftly through the alley, her boots crunching over broken glass. The streets beyond were a nightmare, corpses rotting under the sickly glow of a red sky, abandoned cars rusting in the cold. She had to stay quiet. The dead were everywhere, shambling in search of flesh. She pressed herself against a crumbling wall, peering around the corner. A pack of zombies loitered near a gas station, their lifeless eyes scanning, their movements twitchy. They hadn't seen her yet. One step at a time. Slow. Controlled. A sudden crash rang out. Metal against concrete. The zombies jerked their heads toward the sound, growling hungrily. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Someone, or something, had made that noise. She spotted the source. A lone survivor, a wiry man, scrambling from a collapsed storefront. His leg was bleeding. He had triggered a tripwire alarm. The zombies lunged. Evelyn turned away. She couldn't help him. Then, "Help! Please!" The man's desperate voice echoed down the street. Evelyn's chest tightened. Damn it. She took aim, squeezing the trigger. The first shot blew out a zombie's kneecap, sending it sprawling. Another shot to the head, clean kill. Two more down before the others even reacted. The man staggered toward her as she emptied the last round into the closest undead. "Move," she ordered, grabbing his arm. They bolted down the alley, breath ragged, feet pounding against concrete. When they finally stopped, they were in an abandoned diner. Bloodstains painted the tiled floor. The smell of decay clung to the air. The man, still panting, nodded at her. I thought I was dead." "You still might be," she muttered, reloading her gun. "Who are you?" Maxie winced, clutching his leg. "Didn't mean to cause trouble." "You almost got me killed," she snapped, then sighed. "Where were you going?" Max hesitated. "Then, Pier 14. Her heart nearly stopped. "Why?" she demanded. His gaze darkened. "Heard there was a survivor camp. Some kids made it there." A chill ran through her. "No. Is it safe?" she asked. "Doubt it. I was trying to get there myself, but, gangs." Evelyn's grip on her pistol tightened. She knew about the gangs. Cutthroats who preyed on the desperate, who traded food for lives. If Noah was at the pier, he was in danger. She turned toward the shattered window, watching the city burn in the fading light. "I have to go," she said. Max studied her. "You have someone there?" "My son." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Max exhaled. "Then you better be ready to fight." Evelyn was ready. Because nothing, would stop her from finding her son. Evelyn tightened the straps on her backpack, adjusting the weight of her supplies. Night had swallowed the city in a suffocating darkness, and the only sounds were the distant wails of the undead and the occasional gunshot far off in the ruins. She and Max had waited until sundown to move, easier to avoid both zombies and the gangs that lurked in the shadows. Pier 14 wasn't far, maybe a 2-hour walk if they kept their pace. But the roads were dangerous, the buildings full of death traps, and they had to stay alert. They crept through the ruins, careful to keep their footsteps light. The cold air carried the scent of mildew and rot, making it impossible to tell where the undead were hiding. Evelyn scanned every shadow, her grip firm on the pistol. Max limped beside her, his wounds slowing him down. "We should stop soon," he whispered. "No," Evelyn said without hesitation. "We don't have time." A sudden snap of a twig sent them both into a defensive stance. Evelyn raised her pistol, scanning the darkness. Then she saw them. Silhouettes shifting between the wreckage of cars. Not zombies, these moved too deliberately, too intelligently. Humans. Max cursed under his breath. Scavengers. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She had encountered them before, looters, killers, desperate men who had lost all traces of humanity. If they spotted her, it wouldn't end in a simple robbery. She grabbed Max's arm and pulled him into a gutted convenience store. They crouched behind the shelves as the scavengers moved closer. "Check the area," a gruff voice ordered. Evelyn gritted her teeth, her body tense as heavy boots crunched across the pavement outside. A second voice spoke, lower, calculating. "Tracks lead in here." A shadow passed the broken window, a rifle slung over its shoulder. Evelyn's breath hitched. They had seconds before they were discovered. Max fumbled for his knife, but Evelyn shook her head. Fighting would bring more trouble than they could handle. Instead, she spotted an exit at the back of the store, barely visible behind toppled shelves. Their only chance. She pointed. Max nodded. As the first scavenger stepped inside, Evelyn made her move. She grabbed a glass bottle from the floor and hurled it toward the far end of the store. The crash shattered the silence. "Over there," one of them shouted. Evelyn and Max darted toward the back exit. They burst out into the alley just as the scavengers fired a shot into the store. "We need to move." Max gasped, his limp worsening. They ran, weaving through the maze of ruined streets, Evelyn's heart slamming against her ribs. Behind them, the scavengers weren't far behind. A hospital loomed ahead, its windows shattered, its entrance hanging open like a gaping mouth. It wasn't safe, but they had no choice. They slipped inside. The air was thick with the stench of decay. Blood stained the walls. Then Evelyn heard it. A sound that chilled her to the bone. A clicking noise. Low. Inhuman. She turned the corner and froze. A figure stood in the hallway, taller than any zombie she had seen before, its head twitching unnaturally. Its mouth opened, revealing jagged, uneven teeth. And then it lunged. Evelyn barely had time to react. The creature lunged, moving faster than any zombie she had ever seen. Its gnarled fingers slashed through the air, barely missing her face as she stumbled backward. Max let out a panicked yell, raising his knife, but the creature was too quick. It twisted unnaturally, its body jerking like a puppet on tangled strings. Evelyn fired. The first shot struck its shoulder, but it barely flinched. A second shot, straight to the chest. Still, it kept coming. She pulled the trigger again, but only an empty click came in response. "Shit!" The creature shrieked, a sound that sent ice through her veins. Then, out of nowhere. Boom! A shotgun blast tore through the creature's skull. It collapsed, twitching violently before falling still. Evelyn turned sharply, gun raised. A man stood at the end of the hallway, shotgun still aimed at the now-dead creature. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much. "You're lucky I was nearby," he said. Evelyn didn't lower her gun. "Who the hell are you?" The man smirked. "Name's Daniel." "And you're welcome." Max groaned, clutching his leg as he sank to the floor. Evelyn hesitated, then holstered her gun and knelt beside him. The wound was worse than she thought, the bleeding hadn't stopped. Daniel walked toward them, his boots echoing in the empty hospital halls. "I've got supplies," he said. "A safe place. But we can't stay here. Those things travel in packs." Evelyn studied him. Trust was dangerous. But she had no other choice. "Fine," she said. "Lead the way." Daniel's hideout was a reinforced maintenance tunnel beneath an old subway station. A single lantern lit the space, casting flickering shadows against the concrete walls. Supplies were stacked in the corners, ammo, medical kits, food. It was the safest place Evelyn had seen in weeks. She helped Max onto a makeshift cot while Daniel gathered supplies. "You're lucky I found you," he said again, tossing a med kit onto the table. Evelyn eyed him. "You keep saying that." Daniel shrugged. "Most people don't last long out there." Evelyn didn't respond. Instead, she focused on treating Max's wound. He gritted his teeth as she cleaned it. Daniel leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "So, what's your story?" "I'm looking for my son," she said without hesitation. "He might be at Pier 14. Daniel's expression shifted slightly. Evelyn noticed. "You know something." A pause. Then, "There's a camp there," Daniel admitted. "Rumors say it's run by a group that takes in kids. But it's not what you think." Evelyn's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" Daniel hesitated. "They're not rescuing kids. They're using them. For supplies. For leverage." Rage burned in Evelyn's chest. "If my son is there, I have to go." Evelyn's hands trembled as she tightened the bandage around Max's leg. His breathing was shallow, his face pale. He had lost too much blood. Daniel leaned against the tunnel wall, arms crossed. "He won't make it to Pier 14 like this," he said flatly. Evelyn shot him a glare. "Then we find another way." Daniel exhaled. "There's a supply stash near the old fire station. Meds, food, ammo. It'll help him. But it's risky. Scavengers claim the area." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Tell me where." Daniel's lips quirked into a smirk. "Knew you'd say that." Max coughed weakly. "You don't have to do this." Evelyn squeezed his hand. "Yes, I do." She had already lost so much. She wouldn't lose him too. The fire station loomed in the distance, its doors hanging open, the skeletal remains of a fire truck jutting out from the entrance. Smoke curled from a barrel fire near the front. Scavengers were here. Evelyn and Daniel crouched behind a rusted car, watching. 5 of them, Daniel whispered. Armed. Could be more inside. Evelyn studied the building. "We need a distraction." Daniel smirked. "You're in luck." He pulled a small flare from his pack and nodded toward a gas station across the street. "If we time it right, we'll have about 30 seconds before they realize what's happening." Evelyn nodded. "Let's do it." Daniel lit the flare and hurled it. It landed near an overturned fuel truck. Seconds later. Boom! The explosion rocked the street, sending flames and debris skyward. The scavengers scrambled, shouting in confusion. Evelyn sprinted toward the fire station. She slipped inside, gun raised. The building was dark, the air thick with the scent of mold and rot. She moved quickly, checking every corner. Then, movement. She ducked behind a desk as footsteps echoed nearby. A scavenger. He passed by, muttering to himself. Evelyn held her breath. Then, his radio crackled. "We're under attack. Get back here." The man cursed and rushed outside. Evelyn wasted no time. She found the supply stash near the back, medical kits, bandages, antibiotics. Relief flooded through her as she stuffed them into her bag. Then she heard it. A low growl. She turned slowly. A zombie, trapped in the shadows, its milky eyes locked onto her. It lunged. She fired. The shot rang out, echoing through the fire station. Shouts followed. "Someone's inside." Evelyn's blood ran cold. She sprinted for the exit just as bullets whizzed past her. Daniel was already waiting outside. "Move," he barked, covering her as they ran. They weaved through the ruins, gunfire chasing them. Finally, they ducked into an alley, breathless. Evelyn checked her bag, meds intact. Relief flooded her. Daniel chuckled. "You're insane, you know that?" Evelyn exhaled. "I have a son to save." Daniel's smirk faded. "Then we better get moving." As they slipped back into the shadows, Evelyn knew one thing: she was getting closer. And nothing would stop her now. The underground tunnel was damp and reeked of mildew, but it was safe, for now. Evelyn sat beside Max, carefully applying the stolen antibiotics to his wound. His breathing had steadied, his fever breaking. Daniel leaned against the tunnel wall, reloading his shotgun. "You did good back there," he admitted. Evelyn didn't answer. Her mind was locked onto one thought: Noah. Pier 14 was close. She could feel it. But Daniel's warning haunted her. "They're using kids." She clenched her jaw. "What do you know about the people running that camp?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "They call themselves the Hand. Used to be a group of ex-military survivors, but they got desperate. Now, they trade supplies for bodies, workers, fighters." His expression darkened. "Or worse." Evelyn's stomach twisted. "They wouldn't," she started, but the words felt hollow. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know. But I wouldn't count on them keeping him safe." She tightened her grip on her pistol. "Then I'll burn that place to the ground if I have to." The road to Pier 14 was littered with abandoned cars and half-eaten corpses. The closer they got, the more signs of life they saw: fresh footprints, makeshift barricades. Evelyn spotted the camp from a distance. It wasn't what she expected. Instead of a safe haven, it looked like a prison. A high fence surrounded the dock, topped with razor wire. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. A bonfire burned at the center, casting shadows over figures huddled near shipping containers. Children. Evelyn's heart pounded. "Noah's in there," she whispered. Daniel scanned the area. "We can't just walk in. We need a plan." Evelyn wasn't listening. Her eyes locked onto a figure near the fire. A boy, thin, wearing tattered clothes, his dark hair messy, his face smeared with dirt. Her son. "Noah," she breathed. Relief, disbelief, hope, it all crashed into her at once. She took a step forward, but Daniel grabbed her arm. "Wait," he hissed. Then she saw it. Noah was talking to one of the guards. The man handed him something: bread, maybe. Noah took it, nodding in quiet gratitude. Evelyn's heart clenched. "What is he doing?" she whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. "He's with them." Evelyn shook her head. "No. He wouldn't." Then she saw something that shattered her world. Noah turned toward the fire. He wasn't just taking orders. He was giving them. Evelyn's breath caught. Her son was one of them. Evelyn's legs locked in place, her breath coming in short gasps. The boy standing by the fire, the one taking orders, speaking with authority, wasn't the helpless child she remembered. It was Noah. Her son. But he wasn't a prisoner. He was one of them. Daniel placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "We need to think this through." Evelyn jerked away. "Think? That's my son." Daniel's eyes darkened. "And you don't know who he is anymore." The words cut deep. But she couldn't accept it. She scanned the camp, her mind racing. She needed to get inside, needed to see him, to talk to him. Before she could move, the decision was made for her. A gun pressed against the back of her skull. "Drop your weapons," a gruff voice ordered. Evelyn stiffened. Daniel sighed and slowly raised his hands. "We've got trespassers," the man called out. Within seconds, more guards emerged from the darkness. Rough hands shoved Evelyn and Daniel forward, forcing them toward the camp entrance. The gates groaned open, revealing the hellish world inside. Children and teenagers huddled around burning barrels, their faces hollow with hunger. Armed men stood watch from elevated platforms. The smell of rotting flesh and oil filled the air. And there, in the center, stood Noah. Up close, he looked different, his frame leaner, his eyes harder. He spotted her immediately, and for a fleeting second, something flickered across his face. Shock? Recognition? Then it was gone. Noah, Evelyn breathed. The guard beside her smirked. Oh, this is Rich. You know her, kid? Noah stepped closer, his expression unreadable. He met Evelyn's gaze, his jaw tightening. Then, his next words shattered her. She's no one. Evelyn flinched as if she'd been struck. Her son, her baby, looked through her like she was a stranger. Daniel tensed beside her. Kid, you sure about that? Noah's hands curled into fists. His voice was quieter this time. Take their weapons. Lock them up. The guards moved in. Evelyn didn't resist. She couldn't. Hours passed in a dark, filthy storage container. Daniel paced, muttering curses under his breath. Evelyn sat against the cold metal wall, staring at nothing. She had come all this way. Survived hell. And for what? For her son to turn his back on her? The lock rattled. Daniel spun, fists clenched. The door creaked open, and Noah stepped inside. He shut it behind him, exhaling sharply. You shouldn't have come. Evelyn slowly rose. You're my son. His face twisted. That doesn't mean anything anymore. Evelyn swallowed the pain. It means everything. Noah's fists clenched. I did what I had to do. His voice cracked. The hand, they took me in. They kept me alive. Evelyn stepped closer. They used you. Noah's breath hitched. I made myself useful. Evelyn reached for him, but he pulled away. They'll kill you if you stay, he whispered. Evelyn's heart ached. Then come with me. Noah shook his head. I can't. Evelyn's world crumbled. Daniel stepped forward. Kid, you don't have to stay here. You know that. Footsteps echoed outside. Noah stiffened. They know I'm here. His voice trembled. You have to go. Evelyn grabbed his arm. Not without you. Noah looked at her. Something in him wavered. Then he shoved a key into Daniel's hand. North Gate. Midnight. His voice was barely a whisper. Go. Then he turned and left. Evelyn clutched her chest, breath shaking. Daniel exhaled. At least he still cares. Evelyn wiped her tears. Not enough. But it was a start. And if she had to burn this whole camp to the ground to save him, she would.